Avery, whose show is this?
What? Hold on. Why is it? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Offside, as well as their lead Lakers content creator. And today on the show, we're going to be talking about what you guys want to talk about. Well, yes and no. In the first half of the show, I'm going to throw to a conversation that I had with my buddy Kirk Henderson, who hosts Pod Maverick and runs Mavs Moneyball, and was invited for last night's game into the suite that Luka arranged to have available for Mavericks fans and other Mavs content creators. Kirk and his son went, had a great time, got to meet Luka afterward, and he tells that story on the show. And then we also talk about the season that Luka is having so far, some of the narratives about him. And, I also ask him about some of the trade. Like I really like Najee Marshall. So we talk about Najee Marshall as a trade target for the Lakers, even though I know it's not happening because just the Mavericks are not in a place probably to talk to make a trade with the Lakers. Even though Nico's been fired, I still think it's a little too soon, hopefully, but or not hopefully. So we'll talk about all of that stuff. And then we have a question here from the iTunes mailbag. To those of you who are watching live, you can hit me with however many questions that you want, and I'll answer as many of them over the course of the show that I can. And we'll get out of here and hope in plenty of time for the Rams Seahawks game, which I know, given the crossover between Lakers fans and Rams fans, a lot of people are kind of waiting for. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive on into the conversation that we had with Kirk. A quick reminder, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit that like button. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. And then if you guys are listening to the show in podcast form in the morning, please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, but anywhere that you get them works for me. All right, so I'm going to see how this works. I already worked on it beforehand just to make sure that it throws pretty naturally, but here we go. All right, joined now by my buddy Kirk, my Offsides colleague Kirk, and host of Pod Maverick, Kirk Henderson, also site runner for Mavs Moneyball as well. Kirk Henderson joins us, and Kirk, you did something kind of fun for the game yesterday, right? Like the Lakers were in town to play the Mavericks, Luka's second trip back to Dallas, and I was there in person for the first. Made the executive decision because of the weather to not go to last night's game. You were there, and Luka did something pretty cool with you and a bunch of other creators.
So I don't really know how people were picked. I'm going to be quite honest. The way it was framed on ESPN was that, and on ABC was that it's a bunch of fans, which I think is accurate. It was 22 people ended up being total, and some like my son went with me, and then there were some guests of other people, and it was in the neighborhood of like 15 online-ish people. Some hardcore Mavs fans just have like very active social media accounts, that sort of thing. I would say it was like some people that do this for content creation, but also just people have followed Luka for a long time. So I ended up knowing about half the people there in some way, shape, or form already. But it was I didn't really know what to expect other than I had some communication with the person who set it up, and wasn't really sure it was real until I got the tickets transferred to me. What was it? The game was on Saturday, so I got the tickets like on Thursday. So it was like, it was like 5 or 6 days of wondering if I was being like deeply catfished and like not wanting to say anything to anyone. So this is an interesting week.
So a few people there in Dallas are kind of taking this as like, oh, Luka still loves this and still, misses us and is coming back at some point. I've been kind of chuckling at that being the takeaway. My main takeaway is that, like, I actually think it's really cool that Luka can separate fans from the idiotic organization,
Sure.
right? Like
Yeah.
it was. I think to me that's a much more productive takeaway from what is legitimately a really cool thing. Like, your son is never gonna forget that, and Luka may have just created a Laker fan in your family.
Well, I mean, my wife bought him the jersey the day after he was traded. It didn't show up at my house for like 3 weeks because of the way those jersey ordering services work these days. So he already had a Lakers jersey. But it was an interesting situation, the way it was approached, because I mean we're still not a full calendar year out from the trade.
Yeah.
We got about
Right.
it's like roughly 51 weeks. And so something like this, to this sort of sports magnitude, I don't think it goes away for several years. And so I think that the way it went down, and he came back obviously once already, and and I think this was not the first time he's done this. I think this was the first time that it was publicized. And so my understanding was he had done something like this the first time he came back too. It just wasn't kind of widely as out there. And I think that he's been put in this sort of worldwide phenom situation. Like, it's crazy how many people want a piece of his time and him. And like, people are really like a great, and I'm sure this happened with Kobe and everybody else, but like I went to a Wizards game in Luka's rookie year, and there were people clamoring for his autograph and stuff like that, but it wasn't to this extent like it was when he came back to Dallas, like when Luka came to Dallas the other night, where around the tunnel, like they had to get extra security and get people and like move people back away from areas they weren't supposed to be in when he would come out for his pregame shoot around at 6:30, an hour for tip off, in a game where it was like an ice storm to get to the game. So it was just nuts.
Yeah.
So
I didn't think that they would even play the game. Like, I thought they were gonna, or not play it, but like I thought they were gonna move the game up. I thought they were going to, because the storm wasn't supposed to set in, and we're dealing with it a little bit out here too. It wasn't supposed to set in until like the evening sometime. So I thought they would try to sneak it in the early afternoon and avoid it. But
it being a nationally televised game, I think complicated all of that.
That's when I was like, it makes the most sense to move it. And then I saw, I was like, oh yeah, they're not moving it.
People were real mad around here because like the Dallas-Fort Worth area in a geographic sense is bigger than the nation of Slovenia. Like, it's a huge geographic area. So you got people coming in from all over the place. My co-host lives 15 miles from me and has a completely different snow output than we had here. So it's like getting to the game was always dicey, but it ended up being I was like still it looked to be a sold out crowd at the game yesterday.
Yeah. Was it anything like, I was watching it. So we were hosting Fight Night last night because the first Paramount fights for UFC were so we had people over for it. So I had the Lakers game on mute. The first game that I had gone to there in Dallas after the Luka trade is still maybe the most surreal experience I've ever had at a basketball game, in that there were Mavericks fans at one point booing a travel call on Luka in that game. It was so crazy to have Mavericks fans kind of rooting for the Lakers. Now that game was kind of close, and eventually like they started actually rooting for the Mavericks, but they never stopped rooting for Luka. Now that there's been a little bit more distance here, and now that Dallas has Cooper Flag and Nico has been fired, like, what was the scene in the arena for the game?
Well, it was a really loud game the whole time.
Yeah.
And the Mavericks also have a kind of frustratingly loud game ops situation going on where they're playing music sometimes too loud over the game itself. So it's a little hard to tell from my vantage point. One thing that was helped within this game is that it was a game of massive swings. And so things were going back and forth in a real big way. The first quarter, was pretty much even up until the final 2 minutes. And I think Clay had like 3 turnovers in a row. And all of a sudden, the Lakers are up by 10. And
Yeah.
then the second quarter was kind of ho hum, but the Lakers didn't stop scoring. So it ended up being, I think it was like 65-52. And then that third quarter, the Lakers stayed in the locker room and just allowed the Mavericks free reign at their basket. And
Yeah.
at that point, things started to get real loud
Yeah.
because it felt like it was going to be a pretty easy Lakers victory. And then we had a ball game. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, the Mavericks swung from being down 13 to up 15. And then, like that, it was a ball game again. And so there was a whole lot of like cheering going on both sides. The suite that we were sitting in was right next to Meg Thee Stallion's suite. And then one suite down from that was Cooper Flagg's mom. So like there was a lot, like it was a raucous crowd is definitely what I'll say. But I don't necessarily say it was quite tilted to the Luka experience as before. Because I mean, I think people really do like watching Flag a whole bunch. So it was a great arena. It was a great place to watch a game.
Yeah, I feel like if you guys hadn't gotten Flag, I don't know if basketball would have continued in Dallas. Like that would have been tough. Like I don't know how anybody moves on if that's the case.
It would have been pretty brutal because the team itself is kind of like they all play hard. Like Kid's a good coach in that regard, and that I think he motivates people well. But Dallas just doesn't have like Najee Marshall's really fun. Like I think he's a guy that if the circumstances arose, I think the Mavericks should trade him for whatever they can get for him because he's a good player. But kind of like past him, they don't really have anyone that moves the needle that's tradable. And so it's
who they consider moving, right? Like they're not going to move Flag. They're not going to move
they're also not
Lively,
selling tickets. Like they're not selling tickets to see any of these guys other than Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
And that's because Davis out, Kyrie Irving's out, Derek Lively's out. It's been a challenging year.
Yeah. Speaking of Kid, there's another game that the Lakers and Mavericks play, and Luka just kind of completely avoids Kid there at the end. And you know, the notion at the time of the trade was that Kid had no idea. He says he had no idea that Nico kind of operated on his own. Luka's behavior towards Kid would indicate, though, that Luka might seem to think or maybe even know differently. What do you make of that situation?
I mean, I side with Luka on that 10 times out of 10. Like Jason Kidd, known snake. Like there's just no other way. Like if only we had 10 years and then plus his playing days to look back on and wonder if he's I don't want to say like snake's probably not fair. Like this is a person
Machiavellian. I think we could at least say that.
He does things with intention. Like he's simply saying that one of the best and brightest and most sneaky point guards of all time wouldn't be aware of something happening under his roof is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I just keep coming back to actions over words, and Luka just being like, nah, we're good there. That's a pretty loud action. Yeah. It's out, and it's now a few times over, right? Because the Lakers played Dallas in LA, and then they played
at least
Dallas
3 times
in
now.
Dallas. Yeah, and then now
maybe
this
4.
most recent game.
Yeah.
Where do you think? Obviously the Lakers and Mavs can't make another deal, right? Like I would imagine that Mavericks fans wouldn't handle it very well. You mentioned like Najee Marshall. If the Mavericks could get anything for him, they should do something there. I really like Najee Marshall. He does a lot of the things that the Lakers really, really, really need. And and yet I just don't think that, the Mavericks organization and their relationship with the fans is in a place where they can make another trade to help the Lakers get better again. Do you think we'll ever reach that point? Or do you think, or would it take the Mavericks having some real success first?
I think probably some success first, but also I think getting an actual GM in place. I don't think Patrick Dumont wants to be in the decision-making business. That's why Nico Harrison did what he did. He Dumont trusted Harrison to do his job. That's not always the case in front offices, and Mavericks fans are very confused by that because Cuban was always involved in everything. But I think the owner, once they find a GM that they'll settle on, I think there's always an opportunity to do a deal in the future. I think that currently the Mavericks are sort of stuck in paralysis. What is it? Analysis by whatever it's called, where
Paralysis
they're
by
just
analysis.
yes, they're too worried about the fact that any sort of trade can't. They have to win the trade. I think
Yeah.
like for anybody, it doesn't even 80 or not. And you just can't behave like that in the NBA with the way things go. Like the Anthony Davis trade is the sunk cost. Like it, the dirty little secret that no one will cop to uh in the national media is that the moment that he signed, meaning Anthony Davis signed that albatross of an extension, he had almost no value.
Yeah.
And then Rob Pelinka turned him around for Luka Doncic. That is to say nothing of Anthony Davis's skills. You just can't pay a guy that plays 50 games a year, $60 million a year. You can't do it. Your team
Yeah.
can't win. And you get these folks that'll talk to you, oh, well, Luka only plays 60, 70 games a year. I'm sorry, Luka affects winning. I
Yeah.
know that Lakers fans and a lot of media are very frustrated about him. Go watch that game last night and tell me that he does not affect winning.
Well,
Like
that was
him
the
and
thing that
LeBron.
even in the offsides video that Domin and I recorded that Mavericks fans did not like. I had to mute that tweet. But even in that video, I said, like, it's not that I don't think Luka can do these things. It's that, like, I think it takes coaching to get him to focus on those things. And I guess JJ Redick said after the game that he had kind of challenged Luka and that the Mavericks were really kind of targeting on defense and
He
I
did
think
good.
JJ
He did
and he
really well
spoke.
down the stretch. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they had spoke before the game, said like, hey, this is probably something to get ready for. And I thought he answered that challenge. And it's like, I know he can't, you don't become that good at offense without having some defensive instincts as well, because you know how a defense is going to react to the things that you do on offense.
Yep.
And I think the next step also is like, where, like, what Jokic basically started doing is he knew where he needed to stand to gum up an offense. I think Luka's big enough to do that, so I'm not expecting him to go out there and play lockdown defense 35 feet from the basket, but just kind of be a good team defender. And I've always thought he could do that, and I thought that the conversation around that and him has gotten kind of ridiculous.
Well,
How have you experienced that?
I mean, just like watching the game last night, the Lakers have so many infrastructure-based problems that Luka ends up taking heat for. Like DeAndre Ayton is an unplayable wart of like he is awful. He
I
is
thought that he
awful.
got like PTSD seeing all the ice and like, because he was like shut in his house and he couldn't make it to one of the games. So I think he saw the ice and he was like, I'm going to be stuck here.
He doesn't move on defense. On offense, he absorbs contact,
Yeah.
and then fades away. And he is so much stronger than everyone else and plays like a wimp. And then poor Gabe Vincent is like that shell shocked meme of like the soldier. Just every time he gets the ball, the way the ball hits the rim for him hurts. Like it's like, oh my God, the poor guy.
You mentioned the loud game ops thing, like the ball hitting the rim there because they have mics like on the rim, and the ball hits the rim there. It's like boom.
So anybody that's ever played at a really nice basketball court with one of the like not detachable, but like the breakable rims, there's the box in the back where if you hit that with the ball, it sounds like a slap. And he did that twice, and it was like, oh no. And it's like these things all like, and I bring those two up in specific to point out that it's on offense, the Mavericks were just sitting a guy and a half on Luka at all times. So somebody asked me, why does he move more off ball? And it's like, well, because it kind of screws up the other actions. So sometimes he just goes and stands out of the way. On defense, the team as a whole just really struggles because you're funneling to nobody. And like the Lakers found something last night by going small a little bit in those last 7 or 8 minutes, at least against the Mavericks, because the Mavericks decided to match them, which I thought was idiotic. Like that was arguably the Mavericks tanking that game. Because it's like you were up 15 with 7 minutes left, and you had scored, and then you can only score 8 points over the next 8 minutes. Like that was the screwy ending to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that, when you're as big as the Mavericks are just up and down the roster, and I know they have some guys obviously who aren't available, it's like you still stick to your strengths, and you force the Lakers away from one of their strengths and you force them into small ball, keep pushing that pressure on them. And I was glad that they didn't. But Kirk, this has been really, really fun. That's really cool that you and your son got to have that experience there, and it's
Oh
something that
yeah.
he's going to remember forever. I think that's a
Well,
huge win, big dad
there's
win there for you.
some of the Luca and it's people that I've met on social media and kind of known on and off for years. One of the things that Luca's team did was like give everybody a gift, and one of the gifts was a Lakers jersey, and so I now own an adult XL Luca Lakers jersey. And my wife is just having a field day with it. They actually made me take a some of the women there made me take a picture with it. So like there's a picture with me wearing a
Of
Luca
you.
Lakers jersey. It's the worst. The worst. So
I need to find a way to get that picture, just
mhm,
just for blackmail's sake. That is
just
amazing.
heinous. Life's not fair sometimes. Nah, but it was great. It was great. I recommend to Lakers fans out there, if you get the opportunity to go see Luca play in person, because even when he sucks, he's just such a force of nature, and it's so funny to watch unbelievable professional athletes not be able to do anything with him.
Nothing. It's the thing that has stuck out the most to me this year is like even big, strong, athletic people he just moves them. And
Well,
it's so funny to watch.
and I one more, and I'm sorry to keep talking. I know there's been a lot of consternation about the Luca LeBron pairing. LeBron, when I think if there's just a little bit more shooting, that thing works out like a glove, because LeBron was really taking his moments to exert his will last night. He had a few forced shots, but he had this one crossover at the top of the key where the ball went so fast, and we could see it was like directly in front of us,
Mhm.
where all four people I was sitting around like audibly went, "Oh."
Whoa.
And it's like he just, there's a real value to him sitting back and then just deciding to be the sledgehammer every now and again, because you
Yeah.
forget he's out there, and then it's like, oh yeah, there's one of the best three players of all time, LeBron James.
Yeah.
So
Well, he's the most vocal Lakers defender. And when you slide him from power forward to center and he's allowed to be kind of like the conductor of the defense and use his
mhm,
voice that way rather than have it be Aiton, who just like never
doesn't do
talks
it. Yeah,
defensively. I think that was something that they unearthed there. And I mean, I would still like to, get a center who's vocal, who does those traditional center things. But yeah, the Lakers were hoping it would be Aiton. It was not. And here we sit. But Kirk, as always, thank you very much for making time for me. Be safe out there in braving this winter storm.
well, my
It's
kid wanted to go.
it's
He went sledding. You remember,
yeah.
I live on a street with a hill, and it's all ice, and he just went and slid down the hill over and over again. And I have to stand. I don't have to, but I'm like choosing to stand out there and watch him because I don't want him to die. And it's so cold. Like no, thank you. It's 15 degrees. No, thank you.
I had to put Vaseline on my face today. Just like standing out there, and it's
It's a good
it's
idea.
so cold.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I was standing out the edge because my kids, like, our house has this hill on it, and I'll send you videos, I guess. But the kids were sledding down on like plastic boxes and stuff,
It's the best.
and as they're doing this, the wind is just whipping through the space between my house and my next door neighbors, and my face is just like, oh, this hurts. It hurts. So, and I couldn't look away. If I did, I wouldn't catch
No,
them. And it
that's right.
turns out like Jen would be a little annoyed if I like,
Nope.
hey,
They just kept going.
why'd you miss Miles? My face got cold, Jen. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry. Hmm. All right. You have a good day, buddy.
All right. You too, bud. We'll talk to you soon. Good. All right, we're back. Not as smooth as I was hoping, to get all that thrown together and stuff live on the air. But shouts to Kirk for coming on. Really cool thing that Luka did there for a fan base that still truly loves him. I stand by what I said on the air and what I said at the time, which is that first game that I went to in Dallas with Luka, then a Laker for the first time, was crazy. Like, I've never seen anything like we're all Lakers fans, and everybody hates the Lakers. You know, the Lakers have ruined a whole bunch of fan bases' childhoods. So, and the Mavericks are pretty high up on that list of fan bases that hate the Lakers. And shit, like it's funny, we're now, I think, far enough removed that Mavericks fans are like hating the Lakers for trading for Luka as if like they should have just said no when Nico Harrison approached Rob Pelinka about his interest level in Luka Doncic. But at the time, you know, when I went to the game last year, there were nothing basically but Luka jerseys, whether it was Mavs or Lakers affiliated. You had you know, just deafening fire Nico chants throughout the game. Um, you had, you know, when Luka scored his first basket in that game, it was about as loud as anything that happened you know, for the rest of that game. It was crazy. It was an absolutely crazy thing. And I think this game, because I watched it back a little bit more since talking to Kirk, and I think it's, you know, returning a little bit more to normalcy, but I don't think it'll ever be a normal fan type game. You know, or if it will be, it'll be, you know, if Luka is a Laker long enough to basically be identified as a Laker, then maybe you know, you'll see a shift there. But for right now, it is very clearly not necessarily a Mavericks audience in that arena. It's definitely not a Lakers audience in that arena. It's a Luka game. And I don't know if we'll ever see anything quite like it again. But all right, let's go ahead and segue back into the show as we normally do it on a Sunday. It is a mailbag Sunday episode. I have a iTunes mailbag question that I'm looking at right now. We got some questions here in the chat that I will get to over the course of the show as well. So let's go ahead and do just that. All right, so from iTunes, Lakers Fedora writes, "Hey Anthony, love the show and hope your allergies are feeling better. This year has been awful for my allergies as well. They're doing okay. You guys can see it though. Like I think I might have like permanent damage to the skin just with all of the eye drops that I've been having to take, and then the amount of rubbing of my eyes that I have done. I don't know. Like I probably aged a good 5-10 years this last few weeks or so. But anyway, I am feeling a little bit better. I'm thinking about how the Lakers, with their limited assets, can manage to get athletes and shooting at this deadline, and have some thoughts. Really using experience as salary relief for other teams as the carrot. Would love to hear what you think on these trades. All work in the trade machine." While I was getting ready for this, and he has a few trades listed, so I'll read those individually as well. I have somebody asking here also from the chat, Chad Green, are you hearing anything about the trade market? So I'll go ahead and knock out that question and this question in the same moment. So the thing that I'm hearing above all else is that the entire league basically is paralyzed by this Giannis Antetokounmpo trade request demand situation. Now he hasn't requested a trade. He hasn't demanded a trade. He has said that he will never demand a trade because that's just not necessarily who he is. But nobody believes him. Throughout the NBA, nobody believes that Giannis and his camp are fully committed to the Milwaukee Bucks. And the worse that the Bucks continue to look over the course of this season, the less people are inclined to believe him. Now, I would be pretty surprised if Giannis was moved before the deadline. So there's a real good possibility, if not probability, that a lot of this paralysis is going to continue on past this deadline, and we might see a pretty cold trade deadline as everybody just kind of waits. Eventually people, like some teams, will move on and really kind of go for it when they can. But what they are, basically doing is, if you have any flexibility, if you have any assets, if you have, if you're looking at players on some of these teams that might be on Giannis's list eventually, are you positioning yourself for those conversations so that you could maybe help, like basically benefit from a Giannis trade, even though you aren't getting Giannis? And so you have just, not only do you have the teams that are positioning themselves for Giannis, and the Lakers are kind of more in that group than they are in this other one, but they, you have the Lakers, the Knicks, I think Zach Lowe mentioned the Hawks, the Clippers, the Heat. Like, you have all these teams that are basically, positioning themselves for what everybody seems to think is the inevitability that Giannis makes himself available. And so all of those teams either have draft picks that they don't want to move, they have expiring contracts that they would rather let expire so that maybe they can, um, you know, just take on money into cap space from Milwaukee. Um, you have, teams that have young players who might usually be included in a trade for an upgrade at a different position. Those young players are kind of being held onto right now, just because those teams, and the Lakers are one of them, just don't want to risk their chance at landing Giannis Antetokounmpo with a more marginal move right now. Now, I kind of disagree with that approach personally. Of all of those teams that I listed, only one is going to get Giannis, and all the rest of them are going to have wasted a transaction window, sitting paralyzed, hoping for Giannis to become available. And I don't want the Lakers to be one of those teams. So, as far as like, what am I hearing about the trade deadline? It sounds like it's going to be a really quiet one, until we get more clarity on the Giannis situation. And I guess to a certain extent, the jaw thing and LaMelo is kind of baked into this cake too, though I just don't think they matter anywhere near, like, they are exponentially less sought after than Giannis is or will be. So that's the big factor. And there's just it's kind of frustrating because the Lakers have this expiring money that I think could be used to get themselves some help right now. But it's looking somewhat unlikely as of right now. Things might change. Maybe word finally gets out there that the Lakers don't really have a chance at Giannis, and if that is the case, then maybe the Lakers kind of alter course. But as it stands right now, that's certainly, whether it's on Giannis specifically or whether it's some of the players who might get traded in a Giannis trade, Lakers are really focused on that situation right now. I also want to say, so I'm sure you guys know this. There's this giant snow and ice storm that has kind of moved through the area that I live in. So my internet is all over the place. So apologies on some of the delays and stuff, and maybe some of how I sound. It is simply a case of everybody being stuck at home. Everybody is on the internet at this one time, not just in my house, but all throughout the neighborhood. It's and everybody's internet is moving slower. So apologies on that front. Now let's dive back into Lakers Fedora's question. He has a few trade proposals that I will kind of go through and analyze. So the first one he has is Rui and a swap to Detroit for Ivy and Paul Reed. Also saves us around $3 million in salary this year. Detroit's an interesting team in that, like, a swap with them is not very valuable, just like a lot of teams think that a swap with the Lakers is not very valuable. So in that sense, it might actually be a little bit more valuable because um, I think they'll be in relatively similar seeding situations. So the pick swap might, actually be useful here. Rui for essentially for Aiden, or for Ivy and Paul Reed. I like it. Um, I have found the whole Ivy situation in Denver in Detroit really weird, in that like I think he's a useful player, but the coaches have never really stuck to using him in the regular rotation. And then guys get hurt and Ivy gets more minutes, and you're like, dang, this guy should play more. Remember the Lakers when they played Detroit last year? I believe it was a home game. I just ravaged the Lakers. He was this physical presence that none of the Lakers' smaller guards had any real chance against. So I think he's an interesting player there for the Lakers, and I like him as a swing. Paul Reed is kind of that like somewhat bruising big that the Lakers have missed. So I like it. I don't think Detroit takes this deal though. I think if Ivy is included in a trade, it would be for more of an immediate improvement talent wise. Like I think Ivy, if the Pistons move Ivy, it would probably be for like Michael Porter Jr. But it's an interesting trade. The next one he has here is Maxey or Gabe to New Orleans, plus a second for Bay and Hawkins. Yeah, I don't know how interested they are in moving Hawkins. Bay is certainly, I think, available, and the Lakers have liked Sadiq Bey for quite some time. So this one feels, I wouldn't go so far as to say likely, because it's hard for me to say anything is likely when we sit still this far from the trade deadline. But I would say it's realistic. How about that? I think it's realistic, not necessarily likely, but it also isn't unlikely either. I think this is the kind of trade that I could see the Lakers really looking to make here, so that they can get that wing, get something for their expiring money, and land a player or two who fits into their culture or their core moving forward. The next one, Dalton and Gabe and a first to Indiana for Mathurin and Jarris Walker. I don't think Indiana is looking to move Walker, but they definitely are looking to move Ben Mathurin. And I know that like the numbers say that Ben Mathurin is a terrible defender. I'm not saying that like ignore the numbers on these things. I'm not necessarily usually that kind of a guy, but I think he has the tools to be a better defender than he has been statistically in Indiana. It's also really hard for me to hold anything against anybody in Indiana this year, given that, all of the injuries and the weird season that they're having. They are having just the absolute season of hell of all of the seasons of hell I've ever seen. It's just, I really feel for everybody over there. So, my point is, I think Mathurin would improve defensively if he got to the Lake. Now, and I also like his athleticism at that position, between Luka and Austin. I've always liked him as a conceptual player for that spot. My big hang up here is that I just don't necessarily think Indiana is going to be looking to move Jarris Walker. And I also it's also worth noting here that Ben Mathurin and Jarris Walker isn't the type of return that Rob looked for if he's moving a first round pick. If he's moving a first round pick, he's looking to get a star back, and that an all-star at the very least. Like, that's when you hear like, the players are on, or the Lakers are only looking to move their first round draft capital or whatever, for a needle mover. What that means is a player Rob Pelinka has watched recently in an all-star game. That's what that usually means. It's never for like an up and coming role player or like a creative addition who might, become better than he currently is if he gets into the right team. Again, apologies for the internet. All right, we got two more here. Rui and Dalton plus a second to Chicago for Isaac Okoro, Ayu Dosunmu, and Julian Phillips. Okoro, look, I have friends who either cover the Cavaliers or I have some people kind of close to the Cavs organization, and I asked about Okoro, like, is this a guy that the team should buy low on? And they were like, if we agreed with that sentiment, then the Cavs would have just kept Okoro and hoped that he eventually, provided some return on investment there, and he just hasn't. Dosunmu is really good, though. He would be the highlight of, I wouldn't say he's really good, but he would be the highlight of this trade package. And I think he would be absolutely perfect, conceptually next to Luka and Austin in that backcourt. And then you also then have Jake LaRavia playing as the 3 and LeBron as the 4 and Ayton as the 5. That would be certainly interesting. And then Julian Phillips. I don't have any Julian Phillips opinions. Apologies, everybody. This one's kind of interesting. This one I could possibly see happening. I think the Lakers might, like, I think we're probably not too far away from one of those. Rui has played really well the last couple of weeks leading up to the trade deadline. Like, we're going to get one of those leaks or one of those reports here pretty soon, I would imagine. And it's going to be based on like the 2 possessions that Rui really buckled down, defensively. And it's going to drive me nuts. But look, you're trading a starter in Rui for a guy who hasn't been able to consistently break a rotation in Okoro. Dosunmu is interesting, but I don't know that he is definitely a starter. And then like a younger player in Julian Phillips. So again, if the Lakers trade Rui, it'll be for a guy that Rob Pelinka thinks will start. And I don't know that you could definitely say that about Ayu Dosunmu. Didn't mean to hit that button. Rui and Gabe to the Grizzlies for Santi Aldama and Ty Jerome. That's interesting. I think the Grizzlies would probably ask for a second rounder and maybe also a pick swap for Aldama. He's one of those like hipster NBA, like analytically, real impact player. He always, good Lord. Aldama always plays well against the Lakers, and he is, when you play well against the Lakers, you kind of are always going to be on the Lakers' radar because of the way that the Lakers scout, i.e., the Rob Pelinka rule. And I do think that he is someone that the Lakers would like. He spaces the floor and actually spaces the floor. That would be something that JJ Redick would like. And you could theoretically play him like alongside Jackson Hayes in some lineups, and then maybe also get away with having Vando out there. So definitely a player that they like. Ty Jerome has missed basically all of this year with an injury. He's supposed to come back pretty soon. And he is an absolute knockdown shooter. He really improved last year with the Cavs. And if that shooting is real and it's still a thing, then he would be a very valuable player. I always get nervous if the Lakers acquire somebody for their shooting, because those players tend to get to the Lakers and forget to shoot, and then now you don't have any use for the guy that you used stuff on. So Ty Jerome is definitely interesting, but we'll of all of those trades, I would still say that the Maxey or Gabe to New Orleans, plus a second rounder for Sadiq Bey and Hawkins, is probably the most likely. All right, let's dive on into some of the questions here from. Okay, so Bashir Jama, I didn't see the mailbag tweet, so I stopped asking on Twitter for questions, just because I don't like having to jump around while I'm here. I tend to get as many questions as I need from the chat, and then combining that with the iTunes mailbag. So if you like, basically the call for questions from Twitter is seeing that video there on Twitter, where you could then leave a question underneath that, and I would see that as the as your question for the mailbag. Next one, Revived Gamer HD. Anthony, do you think it's an issue that Rob can't make deals when he's hit with adversity on the market? The big deal here that I've kind of heard a lot about over the years is that, like, Rob just doesn't have very many friends out throughout the league. His time as an agent, right, made him a bit of an adversary for front offices in the past. There aren't very many front offices that really trust Rob Pelinka because he has an affinity for lying. And then you combine that with like teams that don't really want to help as an organization either, right? So like the Portland Trailblazers haven't made a trade with the Lakers in decades. The Sacramento Kings, I don't believe, have made a trade with the Lakers that I can really think of off the top of my head. And then the one time they were getting ready to make a trade with the Lakers, Rob backed out of it at a moment where the Kings thought they had a deal. And then, like the Mavs aren't going to help the Lakers because of the Luka trade. And you can kind of go on through like the league and find any reason that, Team X wouldn't help the Lakers. And you combine that with Rob's kind of shady reputation throughout the NBA and league circles and front office circles, and you arrive at, Rob Pelinka saying, you can't buy a house that isn't for sale, when in reality, these houses aren't for sale to you specifically because you don't have a very good relationship with that house's owner. So what I would actually like to see the Lakers do this upcoming offseason is build out the front office with more people who have better relationships out there in the NBA, so that the Lakers can have more productive conversations with some of these teams than they've had to this point since Rob took over. All right, the next question here comes from Bashir, who writes, Mitchell Robinson and Robert Williams will both be free agents this offseason. Great Luka fits, but do you think Rob would move off his no injury prone players stance? I do think the Lakers will loosen that stance a little bit because they'll trust their medical staff more than they have in the past. This year has been kind of frustrating because it's there, you have guys like sitting out with soreness, right? Like if you see player X sitting out with back soreness or knee soreness or calf soreness and stuff like that, that means there isn't an actual injury quite yet. They want to just get ahead of it. And that's something that, all front offices do, but the Lakers, I feel like, have done it as much as anybody, if not more, this year. And I think that's that's a new medical staff thing. And, we'll see if it works, come playoff time, if the Lakers are fresher than whoever they have to play. But, if that approach does work, and the Lakers would probably trust that medical staff that much more. And I would imagine they'll probably invest a lot more into that medical staff this upcoming offseason when Mark Walter, with Mark Walter fully in charge in ways that he wasn't last offseason. And I do think that as a result, like the Mitchell Robinsons of the world and the Robert Williams of the world might be considered a little bit more seriously than they have in years past. Hopefully, anyway. I've always thought that, like, I've always looked at injury proneness as an opportunity more so than it is a hindrance. And, like, you have all these guys who, you could make any, like, you could find any excuse not to acquire player X. And if the reason for not acquiring that player is injury stuff, well, you could go out and you could trade for a player who is not as injury prone historically. But what happens when you get that guy and he sprains his ankle first day of camp? Like, and then now you're dealing with that, for the next few months. And like, injuries just are just this thing that happens. So my preferred approach is employing the absolute best medical team that you could possibly employ, so that you can mitigate against some of these risks, but then take advantage of some of these risks on some of these players, and ideally have replacements lined up just in case that player's injury history is just too much to overcome. Like, that was the thing that the Lakers ran into with Smart, where when he was hurt and the Lakers didn't have anybody else who could provide some of the, on-ball defense and the perimeter physicality that Marcus Smart does, that's where it would have been nice to have another player who can offer more of those things, who JJ Redick trusted more at the time. Remember, that was back when Vando was out of the rotation, and the Lakers were just too small and not physical enough to compete with most NBA teams. So, I'm always in, and the Dodgers do this all the time. They'll see somebody who, maybe has some recent injury. They'll bring that player in, usually at a bit of a discount because of those injuries. They'll get that player in with their med staff, and sometimes it works out, and you're able to, figure out what is the root issue for some of those injury problems and fix it. And that player is then a lot more productive on a cheaper contract. But then there are other instances where it's like you bring that player in and that player is just always injured and just looks like a whip. But I would hope, Bashir, that the Lakers look at that a little bit differently moving forward. All right. I got time for maybe one more question before we get out of here. No, that's fair. I know, BC, that the Dodgers can, they can do that, or they have more freedom to do that because they don't have a salary cap. But like, one of the things that drives me kind of crazy with the Lakers is their lack of reliance on youth. Youth tends to be cheaper in the NBA. So if you scout well and you draft a player, like, and make that, throw that player into the deep end a little more quickly. Yes, there are going to be some bumps and bruises early on, but if that player ever figures it out, now all of a sudden he becomes depth behind some of the signings that we're talking about here. But when all you ever rely on is veterans, it makes it really difficult to find discount veterans and also have the depth behind them that you need, just in case the reason that they are on a discount turns its ugly head. So that's what I would still like to, yes, navigating the NBA salary cap is very different from navigating baseball's lack thereof. But I still think that there are, like, look at what OKC does. Jalen Williams has been hurt for basically all of the year. You could make a real argument that they looked their worst when he got back. And they have plenty of guys to step into his minutes who abide that team's culture and fit into that team's culture, and prioritizes the things that they want their players to prioritize. And the Thunder are the regular season machine that they are as a result of that. And I think that's something that the Lakers could probably be better at. Dark Galaxy 9936 filler +2 unprotected first round picks in the offseason for Christie and Lively. Only a man can dream. Still have $50+ million in cap space for Kessler, Watson, Eason, Ellis, etc. Yeah, I'm really curious how the Lakers are going to use their cap space. It kind of sounds like the one of their plans is to go to Milwaukee and say, hey, you guys are in cap hell. You can use our cap space as a means to get out of it and quicken your rebuild post Giannis. Or they have that cap space to be able to bring in OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges to help, grease the wheels on a Giannis to Knicks trade. But the issue is, and look, like I it's not even worth talking about Christie and Lively being traded to the Lakers. Like, again, as we kind of talked with Kirk about, I just don't think the Lakers, or I just don't think that the Mavericks feel that they can make a trade with the Lakers, especially if that trade helps the Lakers. Like at that point, Mavs fans start asking, like, wait, what do you exist for? Are you just a Lakers minor league team? But anyway, as far as like the cap space thing, I think it'll be for a combination of a few things. Like I think they'll sign a player here and there. Although I think Utah matches basically anything that the Lakers would want to sign Kessler for. Same goes for Watson and Denver. But the Lakers, like, they'll use the cap to trade for a player is basically like a modern free agency signing. They'll make actual free agency signings and they'll see how much of a roster they could build out and stay under the first apron so that they can be as flexible as they can possibly be throughout the season. Though, we'll see what kind of flexibility the Lakers benefit from this year as they operate under that first apron as well. So yeah, it's kind of an annoying non-answer from me on the cap space thing, but until the Giannis thing is figured out, like that's all that anybody really has is a bunch of non-answers, because everybody is just kind of waiting for Giannis to accept and the Bucks to accept reality and understand that they are at the end of that relationship, as it's always been kind of known to be. All right. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to Kirk Henderson of Pod Maverick and of Mavs Moneyball for hopping on. Shouts to the Lakers for winning that game in Dallas and improving those vibes as they continue on this road trip. And until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your weekend. Make somebody else's. And Raj and I will talk to you. Oh, wait. I don't know if Raj is going to be on the show tomorrow. I'll ask him. At the very least, I will talk to you guys tomorrow.